Esiet sveicināti podkāstu droši ir zināt skatītāji un klausītāji. Par spīti cerībām uz ātru konfliktu atrisinājumu starp ASV, Izraēlu un Irānu cerētā pamiera vienošanās, kas būtu tā kā priekšvēstnesis ilgstošākam mieram, tā arī nav panākta. Šodien ir atsākušās apusējās apšaudes, Irānai uzbrukot kuģiem Hormuza, šaurumā un ASV attiecīgi tad arī atbildot ar triecieniem pa mērķiem Irānā. Jāteic, ka to visu jūt ne tikai Tuvos Austrumu iedzīvotāji, kas tiešā veidā ir iesaistīti šajā konfliktā, bet arī tādi paši cilvēki, tā kā mēs visi, kaut vai piebraucot pie degvielas uzpildes stācijām. Jautājums izsauc arī ASV un Izraēlas pret Irānu vērstās operācijas sekmīgums. Cerētā teokrātiskā un teroristisku režīmu atbalstošā režīma gāšana, kā arī Irānas kodola atbruņošana, izraisa jautājums par to, vai šie mērķi ir vai nav sasniegti. Kāda būs reģiona nākotne un vai ir lietas, kas uzsākot šo operāciju nogāja greizi vai tomēr ir izpildīts, par to raidījumā droši ir zināt. Šodien sarunāsimies ar atvaļināto Izraēlas bruņoto spēku pulkveža leitnantu Oru Horvicu. Mr. Horvicu, welcome to the program. Kurš, jāsaka tā, ilgus gadus ir strādājis arī Izraēlas bruņoto spēku izlūkdienestā. Mr. Horvicu, peace in the Middle East, is it possible, or it's a more rhetoric question? In the last weeks, we have heard a lot from the U.S. President administration that there has been made some kind of achievements, but now today all started once again, and we don't know, will there be any solution or not? What's your, let's say, opinion on this?
So first, great to be in Riga. Thank you for having me. I think we need to take into account that it will be extremely hard to achieve lasting peace if this regime will stay in power. And currently this regime is still in power, because if the nature of the regime will not change, then we will still see him engage in trying to destabilize the region. So this is the first premise. Currently, there is something very interesting, because it seems like President Trump really wants to move on with FIFA World Cup, midterm election, other priorities that he have. But on the other hand, Iran is taking a very hard approach towards the US, requiring to change the status quo in the Strait of Hormuz and basically make it very hard to reach any sorts of compromise. And I still reminded everyone that Iran still have those stockpiles of 500 kilos of enriched uranium where they can basically produce a bomb if they really want to, secretly in the middle of the desert. So it is extremely hard to find zone of potential agreement between the US and Iran. On the other hand, it seems like President Trump really wants to avert full-scale war. But he can be dragged into that, even though if he doesn't want it currently. So I think we are in a very, very delicate position, and only future will tell us what exactly will be. We can find ourselves 2 days, 1 day from now from a full-scale war, or perhaps we can find ourselves in the same limited scale of confrontation for the incoming months. So it will be very interesting to see.
Have you analyzed the goals of this operation, which was conducted by the IDF and U.S. forces in the region against Iran? How successful are the results, or, let's say, can we speak about any success in this operation? Because I remember that there were three main objectives. First, overthrow of the theocratic regime, which sponsors terrorist organizations around the globe. Second one was destruction of this nuclear capabilities of the Iran, and the third one was the elimination of the missile program. So, what of these three things have been achieved, and is there been any success? And if no, what are the reasons?
So first, I think we are in halftime, and it's very, very hard to predict what will happen in the end. Perhaps the most important thing is I think that this regime is much less stable than it used to be 5 months or 6 months ago. It doesn't have the glue named Ali Khamenei, which was the then supreme leader. He was the one who was able to bring together to the table all sorts of frictions and factions within Iran. And now it's extremely hard to do it with Mujtaba Khamenei, which, let's assume that he is still alive. He probably won't have the same leverage or the same gravitas that his father had. On the other hand, you are seeing more and more conflict of power within the Iranian leadership. For example, we heard news that the Strait of Hormuz firing was not an order of the leadership, but someone in the front line. And I think it tells you a lot about the fact that this regime, even though now it's much more radical, it is much less stable. And I think that for the long run, we will see a more unstable regime. And in the end, I think that the train has left the station and that it is a matter of time and not of if. And so this is a very important goal, but we need to keep pushing forward until we reach the point until this regime will be toppled, because it is, and it's not just a cliche being mentioned by an Israeli politician, because I'm not. This is an observation. It's responsible for 90% of the instability in the region. It's this Iranian regime and its malign activity.
Not only in the region. I mean,
in the region.
Also in this part of the Europe, we also feel that with the, let's say, support of the Russian regime.
Exactly. I tend to say that Iran currently doesn't have any red lines, and we know how staunchly it supports Russia in its war in Ukraine. Many of the developments in terms of drones and UAVs came from Iran knowledge and know-how, and we know how Iran involved in basically almost every malign activity. And also it tried to destabilize Europe, and it works on constant occasions to inflict terror in Europe or to try to target Iranian opposition leader on Europe's soil. It doesn't have, as I mentioned, any red lines. So this is in terms of this regime. I think that the most crucial goal, strategic goal that Israel has to have for the upcoming years is to topple this regime, because the fact that this nature is so problematic to the stability of the region. It also forbids many opportunities or seizing opportunities within the region, peace agreements, etc. The other aspect is the nuclear capability and the nuclear program. I'll say two things. First, the robust nuclear mechanism program that was built for years, I think is largely devastated. We don't have, many of the nuclear are no longer there. They're being killed. Many of the conversion sites, many of the enrichment sites, many of them are no longer here. But Iran still have those, as I mentioned, 500 kilos of enriched uranium. And even though they don't have the other robust system, they can build, let's call it, bomb in the desert. They can take approximately 6 bags of this enriched uranium. They can bring it to the desert, take a room approximately this size, relatively small room, with 2 centrifuges that's still there, and create a bomb within 6 or 7 months. So this doomsday scenario is still possible. We eliminated the other scenarios of building nuclear bomb. But because this option is still there, we have an urgent task to find solution to these 500 kilos, either by diluting it, either by exporting it outside, or by finding other means.
Okay, but do Israel or US, do you know where exactly are these 5 kilos of the nuclear dust?
So without getting into specifics, I think our intelligence agency are working very hard to try to find where it's located. But the main problem is that it is not feasible to attack it from the air. If you'll attack it from the air, it will just be like uranium mine for 60% enriched. So basically, you currently, even if you know how to do it, you need to find a way to dismantle that. And just to give you a comparison, the 60% that they've acquired so far, the process from that to military grade enrichment is 2 weeks. So that's why we need to be very vigilant in trying to find solution, hopefully peaceful solution, because if we won't do that, we'll still have this doomsday solution as an option on the table, and we can allow it to happen.
Okay. And the missile program?
So
how crippled is it?
So we did degrade substantial amount of their missile and their missile capabilities. By the way, many of the crucial parts of the force buildup of the missiles have been dismantled, but we know, and we need to take it into account, that if you have a motivation, and because we can't block every material that's coming into Iran, because we know it's a huge country, it can import things, so in the end we need to take into account that this missile program haven't been crushed and that they will build missiles in the future, and this threat is still very, very feasible and imminent. But something very encouraging, it's not just a threat over Israel. Currently, Iran has the capability to fire towards Europe. I think they also can reach the Baltics if they want. And in the future, they had a desire to fire towards the eastern seaboard of the American continent. So imagine yourself, there's capabilities. But I think that we can build coalitions combined with all countries that might be affected from this missile threat and work together. By the way, Israel and its ally in the Gulf, European country and the US, to work together and try to degrade those capabilities. And may I add another thing, that many of those capabilities are coming from dual-use materials that are being imported to Iran. So we need to work very hard in order to make sure that those imports, many of them coming from China, will not go into Iran in the future. So I believe that a coalition that is working against the missile threat is able to deliver some results on this aspect.
If we talk, let's say, about the Iranian regime, from my perspective, it showed some kind of strong resilience when all this war started. I mean, let's say the elite, the political elite, from one, let's say, hand, it was completely decapitated, but well, from the other hand, they quickly replaced all the officials. And what was most interesting thing is that the public, it seemed for me that it supported the regime, wasn't that?
On almost every polls that we've conducted, and I can also share with you that many polls that the regime conducting with its own population, we are seeing approximately the same numbers. 80 to 85% of this, the Iranian population are loathing this regime, not just disagreeing with him, but thinking that it needs to be revolutionized, change as a whole, and this mechanism has to change. So many Iranians have this belief. The main problem that we currently have is that the Iranian regime still have approximately 15% of staunch supporters who are willing to die, who are willing to kill their own fellow citizen in order to keep this regime in power. So I think this is perhaps the main problem. But just 6 months ago, we've seen hundreds of thousands of people from the Persian ethnicity, which is the majority of the Iranians, marching into the street trying to topple this regime, even before the US and Israel acted. So I think that many people in Iran are in the same belief. Iran is perhaps the most secular country in the Middle East, the most pro-American, the most pro-Israel among all other nations in the Middle East. So I think the instincts are there. The main problem is that it is extremely hard to know the right time where this regime will be toppled. We've seen in the past, we've seen it with the Soviet Union, we've seen it with other regimes like Afghanistan, etc. The right moment where these regimes are being toppled is very hard to predict. We need to be prepared for the moment if and when it happens, and to be aware of the fact that it might happen in several years and not necessarily in 2 weeks, in 1 month, or in 2 months.
On your opinion, didn't the US and Israel miss the right moment? I mean, we know that not so long time ago, there were these big protests in Iran, which was in the January, which was oppressed violently by this revolutionary guard. The estimates of the casualties of the protesters is they are approximately 13 to 15,000 people just shot on the street. And I remember this. The situation when Mr. Trump, the president of the U.S., said, well, keep on protesting and take the buildings, etc. We are coming. And after a few days, he said, well, we have some kind of agreements with the Iranians. So, but at the same time, they just killed the people. And when all the war started, from my perspective, I didn't saw there a lot of support of those attacks among the average citizens of Iran. So did you lose the momentum? Because last year, in 13th of the June, when the Israeli operation towards Iran started, the situation was little bit different. I remember there was a lot of videos with the Iranian youngsters who were happy about the attacks on Iran.
I think that Iranians, first of all, they want to live. And when you are in war zone, you don't go to the streets and try to march against the leadership. And of course, the leadership is focusing approximately 50% of its resources to make sure that there won't be any opposition. So it's extremely hard for the average Iranian to go to the streets. So I think this is one of the limitations currently being imposed. But I think you were spot on regarding the fact that we didn't act the way we should have in January. The number one priority for both Israel and the US needs to be to confront the very existence of this Iranian regime, because you can handle the nuclear aspect and you can handle the missile aspect, but in the end, its very nature causes instability in the region. Its very nature make the nuclear threat imminent. So I think that we need to approach, and whenever And I believe that there will be a time, sooner than later, where we'll see opposition trying to march towards the street, where we'll see people going to the streets. I'm hoping we'll have to find mechanisms, for example, to defend the opposition who are going to the streets. Now we have these capabilities because we have Ariel's superiority on the streets of Tehran. So we can use this advantage in order to safeguard the opposition and let them know that we are with them and that we are support them in their just fight to fight this tyranny and this horrible dictatorship.
Mm-hmm. Okay. How can you characterize what is the Russian role in Iran's politics, and not only in just politics but also in its weapons program?
So first, it's very interesting to see that Russia grasp over the Middle East is being weakened. And it was very, very evident after the President Assad topple 1.5 years ago. So I think that the strategy, the trajectory is very evident. Russia is becoming increasingly weaker in the Middle East because of all of its problem and because of the fact that it is losing ground in its war with Ukraine. So Iran, to that extent, is perhaps the last stronghold that it has in the Middle East, and it wants to keep it that way. But it's not the same as Syria. Syria was a strategic partner for Russia, and Russia and Iran plays a very interesting games where basically they have some sort of strategic partner, but because Iran is such a vicious adversary for Israel and the US, so Russia plays a rather different game. We are seeing military support for both sides. Iran was major part of the military development of the drone industry in Russia. We know that for a fact. And we also know that the know-how of these drones came back to Tehran, and Tehran is using it now. So basically, those connections improved heavily during the past 3 or 4 years. And if you look at it, Russia doesn't have any other choice but to approach Iran. Iran has the know-how. Iran knows how to handle sanctions. So basically, this partnership is being much closer than it used to be. On the other hand, Russia needs to take into account the fact that Israel is, I don't want to say a friend, but Israel is some partner where you have dialogue with. And I think Putin understands that. So he plays this delicate game, but I'm well aware of the fact that many reasons why Iran is at this point of military capabilities, and many reasons of the military capabilities that Russia have built through the past 3 or 4 years have been built exclusively because of the partnership between Russia and Iran.
Mm-hmm. Did Russia help to Iranian regime with the nuclear program?
A very interesting question.
Is there some kind of evidence?
My assessment is that the answer for that is no. There is some Russian facilities, especially in Bushehr, but it is not a secret. I mean, they operate it with full disclosure. I think that in the end, Russia doesn't want to be involved directly or indirectly in Iran nuclear aspirations. And I'm also not certain that Russia wants nuclear Iran on its borders. I'm not sure that this is what it wants. The main problem that we currently have with the nuclear capabilities is that Iran developed the know-how almost by themselves. In the beginning, 20 years ago, they got the assistance of Pakistan, Abdelkader Khan, who died back then. But now they have, because it was such a robust system, it was such a developed and advanced nuclear capability, they had the know-how within Iran itself. And that perhaps was the major problem. Because on Russia and on China, ironically, you have leverages. On Iran, it is extremely hard because they see the nuclear capability as the only bulwark against an Israel or US attempt to topple this regime.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What's happening right now with those terrorist regimes, basically with the Hezbollah and the Hamas, the pro-Iranian terrorist regimes, which are for long years terrorizing the people of Israel? Are they stronger? Are they weaker? Considering the situation where the Iran is right now, I mean, how big danger do they possess to Israel right now?
I think that the danger that they are posing on Israel is very, very different than what it used to. I'll take you back to October 6, one day before October 7 attack. Hezbollah had 150,000 rockets and missiles. I don't think that any superpower whatsoever have these sorts of capability. It has 7,000 troops ready with the capability to invade Israel territories within half an hour or 1 hour notice, to invade our citizens, to kill our people. Hamas has the same capabilities and with approximately 50,000 rockets. Unfortunately, Hamas was able to use it on October 7 and to kill 1,200 of our people, most of them citizens. So I think that those threats, the threat of ground invasion and the threat of saturating our air with rockets, this threat basically vanished. They don't have the same capabilities because we increased our military presence, we decreased and degrade many of their military capabilities. So they are substantially weakened than what they used to before October 7. But we still haven't been able to dismantle them completely. We've seen what happened with the fiber drones used by Hezbollah. We know that there are still Hamas operatives in Gaza. And as long as those two movements will still be in power, it will be extremely hard to moving forward for peaceful solution, either in Lebanon or in Gaza. I'm more optimistic in Lebanon because I think that we have partner named the Lebanese society. Over 70% of the population want
the society or the government?
I think both of them. I think that the government is a representative of the society. The entire sects who are not Shiite, I think, supports staunchly, in North Korean ratio, the demilitarization of Hezbollah. And then we also see some cracks within the Shiite population regarding Hezbollah. So I think that you have partners in order to overcome it. And I'm hoping that with the use of demilitarized Hezbollah and with the help of the United States architecture and the support of the Lebanese society, we will be able to demilitarize Hezbollah and perhaps even get into a peace agreement with Lebanon. I generally believe that it is possible.
But how big still they feel, the support from the Iran on both of these terroristic regimes?
Hezbollah is basically Iran. Hezbollah is a subordinate of Iran. There is no doubt about it. Iran basically established...
And Iran is still able to support it...
It doesn't have, just to give you an example, it's not a Lebanese actor, it's an Iranian actor. How I know it? Because when you you started the war in the operations, the joint operation in Iran, Hezbollah fired towards Israel. Even though we haven't fired one rocket towards Lebanon, Hezbollah fired towards Israel. And it was the second time that Hezbollah dragged Lebanon into war. The first time was on October 8 on behalf of Hamas. The second time was in March 1st on behalf of Iran. So basically, it is an Iranian actor and subordinate to Iran. Hamas is rather different. It gets many of its military support from Iran, but it's moving in a delicate position between, on the one hand, the Muslim Brotherhood, on the other hand, Iran. So I think that Iran relationship with those two actors is rather different. We need to work very hard to dry the Iranian swamps on both Lebanon and in Gaza, and it's feasible for the first time because Hezbollah lost a strategic partner named Syria, currently being held by President Oshara, who is perhaps not a staunch pro-Israel, but I can assure you he hates Hezbollah much more than he hates Israel. So perhaps we can do much more in the Lebanese-Syria border, which is the main source of money laundering and military infrastructure are coming to Lebanon. So we can dry this. And also regarding Hamas, we can make sure that they won't get the same Iranian funds that they used to. And I believe it's possible, even though it is much harder to do it in Gaza, because unfortunately, we are not seeing any alternative in Gaza. In Lebanon, there is an alternative. In Gaza, currently, there is no alternative.
Do Russia also support all these, well, both of these regimes? Hamas and Hezbollah. Last year we were in Israel and a lot of experts told me that they have found a lot of Russian-made weapons, the new ones, not the Soviet time, but the new ones in the possession of both of these groups. Do they still support them with the weapons or somehow else?
So unfortunately, even though it's not directly, but indirectly, many of the weapons being used against us next to our borders are Russian weapons. I'm not sure that Russia is proactively doing that, but there is no doubt that it is not doing enough to make sure that their arm transfer to other countries will not proliferate to terror organizations.
What's your opinion? Do Russians know about that? How are their weapons being used in the Middle East?
When we know
and who is using them?
So when we know it, we approach them, and we are very blunt regarding when we had a reservation regarding that. But again, this is a fact that many of the weapons being used against us in Hezbollah, some of them in Hamas, are Russian-made weapons. And again, I'm not blaming Russia explicitly, but I think it can do more to make sure that that arms will not be proliferated to organization. And I'm not sure they are doing enough.
Mm-hmm. After the 7th of October tragedy, basically all the normal people understands that Israel and the society of Israel was a victim, and Hamas basically was the main aggressor. But somehow this narrative has changed. Did Israel made some kind of analysis of the mistakes? Why so easily this narrative has been changed, and why Israel from the victim became in the role of the aggressor in the, let's say, in the minds of the rest of the world?
That's a great question. So I don't want to blame every of these sentiments on anti-Semitism. It's not true. Some of them are being originated within Qatar funding propaganda. We know it for a fact. There is no doubt about it. But some of it are regular people who are seeing some of the devastation in Gaza, and there is devastation in Gaza, and tend to, I think, misjudge Israel as the aggressor. We need to understand how it started. It started after Israel evacuated completely from the Gaza Strip, and then Hamas firing and kidnapping and murdering and raping men and women. So you need to understand the point of view that Israel had after that. We had major disagreement within the Israeli society regarding what to do with how to approach the Palestinian challenge. We have many people in Israel who supported the two-state solution. We have many people in Israel who didn't agree with the government. But on October 7, Yehia Sinwar, the leader of Hamas, didn't care whether you are a Jew or Muslim or Christian. He murdered everyone. By the way, there were, I think, 30 Muslims who were being butchered and killed during October 7. So I think many Israelis understood the sheer evil that are against our eyes, and I think this is why we acted the way we acted, and we didn't do it in order to target civilians. Again, I've been to Gaza, I think, 30 times. I'm not saying that we are perfect. We are imperfect democracy just like any other country, but I can assure you that we are targeting targets only if there are military installations in there, trying to minimize as much as we can the collateral damage in Gaza and elsewhere. And it is extremely hard when Hamas taking the fact that there will be civilian casualties as an advantage. We know that Yehia Sinwar wants to have tens of thousands of civilian casualties. He wants it to be that way because he thought it will lead to delegitimization of Israel. So it is a major problem when your enemy wants its citizen to be killed. So we're working in a hard environment, and of course we've made mistakes, but I think to portray us as a genocidal country, I think it's just an inaccurate way to portray us.
Indeed, but at the same time, there is a, let's say, battle on the military front, and there is a battle about the hearts and minds of the rest of the world. I mean, if you are Israeli citizen, I believe there are nothing to convince about you, but at the same time, if you are some kind of a Spanish person or Italian or German, we have to, well, in the ideal world, you have to explain why you are doing that. So have you made some kind of analysis? What went wrong with this, let's say, attitudes? Why was such attitudes from the public in these countries, what I mentioned? For example, recently in the May, there was a Eurovision Song Contest, and there was a lot of discussions, allow or not allow to Israel to participate there. So, and such a discussions happens every day, and so there's the question, what went wrong with this strategic communication issue?
So there is no doubt that we are really bad in trying to articulate the message to Western audience. We are really bad at it because I genuinely think that we are fighting a just cause. I think that the proportionality and our genuine efforts to minimize collateral damage was real. I think that the fact that Hamas is a core problem for Palestinians, at least as much as it is to Israelis, I think we had a good case for that, even though, as I mentioned, we are imperfect. But it is really hard to articulate it. And again, I need to take into account two factors. Some anti-Semitic stance within several, we've seen what happened in the American alt-right, we're seeing what happened in several parts of Europe, and also very, very hard effort, especially financed by Qatar, to try to change hearts and minds. And again, it is very interesting that we are seeing movement that is acting like ISIS or Al-Qaeda, and a country that tried to fight it. And in the end, the country is being perceived as the bad side of the story is Israel and not this Palestinian Al-Qaeda that we are seeing. And as I've mentioned, Hamas was the movement or the terror organization that threw Palestinians from the rooftops after it control of Gaza. So it's not like this is a genuine alternative. And I think we need to understand, many people perceive Hamas as some sort of resistant movement, national. No, they are anti-Semitic to the core. We know exactly the instructions that were made. We know the calls that were being made from the Gazi envelope, where a guy called his mother and was proud that he killed 12 citizens. This is unbelievable, and we need to understand. I want to emphasize the fact that we had problem of radicalization within Gaza. And if we want to change the spectrum in Gaza, it is also true regarding the West Bank.
Yeah,
we need to start with the radicalization.
The point why I was asking to you this question was because we have a, let's say, thank God, not the same situation, but kind of similar one with Russia, which is aggressor state here in the neighboring the Latvia also. And which, let's say, are spreading the narrative that we here are the Nazis and we oppress the Russian people, etc., also the Jews, but which is not true, of course. Yeah. So that's why I was asking. Well, so what kind of lessons we have to keep in mind living also here, facing not the same. The little bit different, but basically the same enemy as the Israel, because I know that Israel is, let's say, encircled by the more or less quite aggressive Arab states. Well, we have the same situation here in Latvia.
Great question. I think that first you need to see the enemy from his own perspective. I think that one of our misconceptions was our desire to see Hamas in the way we wanted to see it, and not in the way they saw the ideological, the religious zealots that they have, something that for us, people of the West, it's very hard to assimilate with, to try even and understand. So I think it needs to start with the understand the true identity of your adversary and the way he thinks, and know that he thinks rather different than you are. Secondly, don't misjudge him. Even if he perceives weak, he's not necessarily weak. Even if you think that you are strong, you are not necessarily strong. And you need to be very cautious regarding the threats that can be imposed by him. Third, deception works. It works on us. Hamas deception works on us. It made us believe that it doesn't want confrontation when actually it prepared for 3 years for this ground operation and grand operation. So I think that you need to take into account that your adversary might think about this scenario, even if you want to avoid it, or even if you believe that this is not probable. It can be probable, learn from our mistakes. And I think you need to draw the right analogies from history, but also understand when the analogies are accurate and when they are false. Not every enemy is Hitler, and not every enemy is Nazi Germany. I think that Hamas is a very interesting example where there's something very similar to Nazi Germany, because the only way to confront them is, in my perspective, total dismantling. There is no other reason, because they just wouldn't compromise on anything. They keep fighting, they keep killing their own citizens, they keep trying to kill our own citizens. So the only way to handle them is to kill them, unfortunately. So you need to take the right analogies and to understand which lesson can you learn from history, trying to overcome and challenge and tackle the adversary, and which lessons are inaccurate. And it is very interesting when you look at the Russia analogy, because you need to understand what it really wants and how it perceived your threats and what it plans when it think of Latvia or in the Baltic as a whole.
Yeah, so lots of things can be reflected as in our situation here as well. Lieutenant Colonel Oru Horvicu was our guest. Thank you very much, sir, that you found the time to participate in our podcast. Thank you very much, sir. And jā, un arī paldies jums, tā teikt, skatītāji, skatījāties. Nu, kā jau dzirdējāt, tad mums vēl ir faktiski daudzas lietas, ja mēs gribam sevi aizsargāt no tā agresora, kas mūsu reģionā, tad, kas mums ir jāņem vērā un ko mēs varam arī mācīties no Izraēlas pieredzes. Paldies, ka skatījāties. Sekojiet mums līdzi mūsu YouTube kanālā, portālā Sargs.lv, kā arī citos sociālajos tīklos. Ja patīk, nekautrējieties, liekiet laikus, izplatiet šo video tālāk. Kārlis Roķis ir mans vārds. Paldies, ka skatījāties. Visu labu!